Okay, okay. Take your seats. Settle down. Settle down. Welcome to the Road to Concord 101. This class is about all things connected to the path of history leading from Mount Sinai to Lexington Green and the individual liberty and freedom of man. If you're in the wrong place, feel free to get up and go see the registrar's office about dropping this class, preferably before you meet the professor. In the event you do not already know this, your professor is Joe Bakanovic, and he has a bit of a reputation on campus. He is most definitely an acquired taste, but if you can learn to tolerate him, he will make you better at defending your position, whatever it may be. I'm T.A. Charlie. I'm here to help the professor, but more importantly, you. We encourage you to take notes, and if you have questions, feel free to call. If you'd like the number, please email us. You can also post your questions in the comments, and we'll get the professor's attention. Part of my job is to let you know a little bit about your professor. As I said earlier, the professor has that bit of a reputation on campus. Not all of it is good. Let me help explain a little with a story about how I came to be the professor's TA. I was invited to attend one of his classes. My first impression of the professor was that he was an egotistical, narcissistic know-it-all. My intent after only a few minutes of class was never to attend another class with this professor. But after class, Professor Joe came up to me and thanked me for my class participation and told me that my perspective was valuable, and he asked me to keep coming to class. This actually took me back a little. To me, he seemed inconsistent. What was I to do? I decided to continue coming to his classes. As I did, I actually started doing what he does encourage students to do. Check behind him and see if what he is teaching is actually correct. I have done this over and over again, and generally speaking, I found what he teaches to be backed by sound, valid, and rational arguments from reputable sources. When I have challenged him and provided a sound, valid, and rational argument in opposition to his current position, he immediately changed his position and thanked me for correcting him. Why do I tell you all this? Professor Joe is a little rough around the edges, especially in the way he delivers his content. But if you stick with him and listen to what he teaches and then go and check his sources, you will likely find, as I did, he will help you better understand the world around you and help you to think better and hopefully to live better. At least that is our hope. One last note. This class builds on itself. Therefore, it is important to attend class regularly. We will not always have time to go over previously covered material. If you are new, we suggest you watch our older classes. We've created playlists to help you with those things we feel are of special importance. Now, let's get started.
Good morning. It's Monday, December 1st, 2025. This is the Road to Concord. I am the Professor Joe Bakanovic. Not my title, something one of y'all out there in the audience slapped on me. Remember, I'm a recovering narcissist, so I would try not to give myself anything that I don't deserve. At least I try. Anyhow, hopefully y'all have had a good Thanksgiving holiday and more importantly, a safe one. Everybody back in class, ready to start studying again. I did hear from several of you that said that you missed the show while we were gone. You poor people. You got to get a life, man. But seriously, thank you for that. And thank you to each and every one of you who care enough about what we're doing here to donate to this show to help us keep it going. I don't as often thank you as I should. I'm thanking you now. And several of you especially, you know who you are, but there are 3 or 4 of you who are primarily responsible for keeping this show on air. Everybody's donation helps. So don't get me wrong. I'm not belittling anybody. If you don't do anything more than hit the like button or share the show, I have as much appreciation for that as I do for those who provide substantial donations and monetary funds. I just want to make sure each and every one of you know that you're all special to us. It's just that I don't want those ones that are helping to really carry the lion's share of this show to think that they are taken for granted. They're not. And I will never mention their names unless they ask me to, because I don't want to take whatever blessings they have from this in the hereafter away from them. Remember, Scripture says, if you give and let the world know you gave, that recognition is all the reward you get in this world. But if you give quietly and you not let the left hand know what the right hand is doing, you'll be rewarded for that in heaven. I'm just trying to protect that for those people. And yes, this is a scripturally based show. All right, let's get going today. I pulled an audible. What I was going to do today will be tomorrow. It's already scheduled on Rumble. But for today, I want to share a few articles with you in a moment here, but I've been thinking, and that's not always a good thing, especially in my case. You guys always ask me, the audience does, and people from other shows when I'm a guest on those other shows, what do we do, Joe? What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? I don't. We'll cover that a little bit more depth toward the end of the show. And I'm not sure that there's an answer to that question anymore. Not one you and I want to hear. But we live in a world now, in a country, in a society where there's no law. There isn't. There's no law. It's the law of might makes right. Yes, we have a legal system, but it doesn't function anymore. Not the way it should. Not the way it was designed to. And that's because of the people. The people have changed, not the system. And it's the destruction to this country has been intentional. So we have, and it's not so much that we don't have law, we have no certainty in the law. We don't know whether or not the law is going to be applied the way it was intended. And a lot of times it depends on whether or not you got a Democrat or a Republican judge. And it shouldn't be that way. A judge shouldn't be a political person. And yet, unfortunately, they are. But you have no certainty in your language. We have no certainty in our history anymore. No certainty in anything. And when there's no certainty, there's no trust. No capital T truth. No moral clarity. And this is the goal. Everything has been declared relative. And from that, you get insecurity, fear. Yes, fear. Fear leads to the dark side. Yeah? Well, there's a lot of truth in that. Fear does lead to the dark side. Because when people are afraid, they will sell themselves to anybody who just promises to make the fear stop. And most of the time, the people who promise those things are liars. And yet, when you're afraid, you'll believe the lie. We're going to get into that a little more in just a moment. But here's one of the stories that I wanted to share with you. It's up on the Blaze Media right now. And the link is in Rumble's description. If you go to the Rumble page, the show on Rumble, and you look in the description, I put the link there, and Natasha's sharing it. By the way, Natasha is standing in for Charlie for the next few days. He's still traveling, so keep him in your prayers. This is by Glenn Beck, December 1st, 2025. A nation without trust is a nation on borrowed time. And that's the whole purpose. This is when institutions betray the public trust, the country splits and spiral. The spiral is hard to stop. And he says, something drastic is happening in American life. Headlines that should leave us stunned barely register anymore. Stories that once would have united the country instead dissolve into silence or shrugs. It's not apathy exactly. It's something deeper. A growing belief that the people in charge either cannot or will not fix what is broken. When people feel ignored or betrayed, they will align with anyone who appears willing to fight on their behalf. Now, I had written the description for today's show before I read that article. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it says exactly what I wanted to say today, or in a part. And this is part of what's going to explain mega, mega, mega. You look to Trump and you think he's fighting on your behalf. And a lot of you would defend him and say, yes, he is. But is he? Is he really? I'm going to ask you a serious question. When Obama was still in charge and he was droning, killing American citizens without any type of due process, were you in support of that? Were you defending him? Were you rah, rah, rah? Yeah, drone those terrorists. I don't care if they're Americans. Go ahead and kill them. Most people on the right were not. We were pointing out that that was unconstitutional. It was illegal. We wanted action taken on Obama. Nothing happened. Trump is doing the same thing to the Venezuelans. Now, in this case, he could make a better military argument for doing what he's doing. And yeah, he has precedent. But part of that precedent was set by people like Obama, who you and I opposed. So if you're going to defend what Trump is doing in Venezuela, and you were opposed to what Obama was doing in the Middle East, you're a hypocrite. And I have no reason to listen to you. Because in truth, when I look at your actions, you're against it when Team D does it, but you're for it when Team R does it. You don't have principles or ideals. There's no capital T truth there. So I don't want to listen to you. Now, don't think I'm bashing President Trump. I like what he's doing. I hate the way he's doing it. Why can't he just get a declaration of war? That doesn't require a 2/3 majority. That just requires a simple majority in Congress. Well, that's because Team R won't give him that, will it? No, it won't. So he starts acting like a dictator, which gives the left the fuel to charge him as being a dictator. That works right into the hands of those people who are trying to destroy this country. And those of us who support Trump and what he's doing, instead of screaming on his social media left and right 24/7, trying to get a hold of his attention, telling him, stop, do it legally, we give our support to the forces that are destroying this nation. We align with evil. If you're destructive, if you're nihilistic, you're aligning with evil. So you try to explain what's happening to people. We've done that here on this show now for several years, 4 years going on? And you're labeled a conspiracy theorist. Well, I have brought you the receipts over and over again. I'll continue to bring them. I'm going to bring some of them tomorrow. But if you ask me for the proof and I present it to you, now I'm not going to say that's all of you in this class, but I know it's some of you. I know it is. I know as a fact that I can give some of you the proof you demand and you'll still reject it. Why? Why? I give you their own words, written and spoken, video, and you reject it. Why? What type of proof are you looking for? And why would you reject it when it's given to you? You know, there again, the right will say, hey, you can't argue with the left. When you give them logic and reason and proof, they reject it. Aaron Spike says it's just kabuki theater. I tend to agree with him now. Everybody knows it's kabuki theater. We all know the truth of what's going on. You know, there's a story within the story. The actors are pretending that one thing's going on, but the whole audience knows it's actually something else. Kabuki theater. Well, in part, one of the reasons we won't accept information contrary to what we want to believe, it's all built into human nature. We tend to be risk adverse. This is one of the reasons that people that are like well, I can't say that anymore. I was going to say first responders in the military, but in my day, when I was younger, there have always been bad apples. But when I was younger, the police, firefighters, and the military, you know, the ones that ran to the sound of the guns or charged into burning buildings, they weren't so much risk adverse. They had enough courage to overcome their fear. I can't say that about most of them these days. I wish I could. I have no trust in those institutions anymore, and for good reason. They've earned my skepticism through their actions. So risk aversion can be legitimate. Then there are people who don't want to believe the truth just because of disbelief in general. What can they trust? I bring you the proof, and I can't trust that anymore. Everything's made up. Well, that's one of the reasons I prefer printed books. Real hard for you to press a button somewhere in a hidey hole of computer, terminals and change my book on the shelf there. You could do it to my Kindle. You can. You can't do that to that printed book right there. You have to burn those. Then there are people who just reject it because they're in denial. People who would reject it because of pain avoidance, just fear. There are those who have no curiosity. They demand answers and proof and evidence, but they don't really want it. They just want to look like they do. Then there are people who are lazy. They don't want to go look for the truth for themselves. And if you give it to them, they don't want to check it. They don't want to test it. It's easier for them to tell themselves, it's just a lie. I can't trust that. They make excuses. It's willful ignorance. Refusal to believe what is true. Or it's fear of the ramifications, because if I accept what I'm being told, and I am a decent person still, or have some vestige of decency, now I have to face the consequences of what I'm being told. What does it mean? What is it going to demand of me? What does it mean for my family, my security, my future? Oh, now those are questions that are very, very difficult for us. We don't want to face those. We'll come back to this. So I'll tell people that this is all coordinated. And they'll say there's no coordination because look, this group's doing this and this group's, BLM is for the blacks and Antifa is against fascism and Occupy is against the corporations. And that's got nothing to do with the media. The media has their own political bias. They're for the Democrats or for the Republicans or whatever. None of this is coordinated. None of this is the same agenda. Yeah, they are. Yes, they are. You think it's all chaos, or a lot of us do. Now, this one here, I have sympathy for, to a point. On the surface, it does appear that these things have nothing in common. But you have to look deeper. What are the common goals of all of those groups? The destruction of the United States as it was founded. The destruction of our governmental system as it was designed, as it was intended to function. The destruction of individual rights and liberty. The destruction of private property. Those goals are all in common. So when you see a common goal, but differing agendas, well, all you're seeing is the NFL. The Philadelphia Eagles have nothing in common with the Washington Redskins or the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Baltimore Orioles. They're nothing, all very different teams. They've got nothing in common, except they're all there to win the Super Bowl. And for sure, baseball, hockey, and football have nothing in common. Now, those are different sports, Joe. Now, those are, except that they're all there to win the championship. They're national champion. Oh, I guess they do have something in common. So I can throw a long bomb to get when the bases are loaded so I can score a hat trick, right? Well, Joe, that's just ridiculousness. Well, depending on how you're looking at it, no, it isn't. It's all just phrases particularly or peculiar to that particular game designed to help win the game so that you can win the championship. To win. They all have something in common when you look deeper. Boil it down to the lowest common denominator. So what we're dealing with in all these different conspiracy theories are competing ideas. It's a battle of the self-appointed elites. Have you ever paid attention to what Dr. Thomas Sowell has tried to tell us about the elites? He's written several books on them. He despises them. And yet he would be counted as an elite. although he doesn't seem to count himself that way. But these elites, these self-appointed, I'm smarter than you intellectuals that, they're fighting with each other. But for the most part, have you looked at them? They can't square up and go throw hands at each other. They'd fall over in a stiff wind most of the time. Really, Joe Biden's going to fight Donald Trump. That wouldn't have ended well for Joe Biden. I don't care if you don't like Trump. That wouldn't have ended well for Joe Biden. Trump's only got like 6 inches and 100 pounds on Biden. And Biden is really frail. Trump seems to be in fairly decent health. Or in the day, could you have seen Al Gore throwing fisticuffs with W? Like him or hate them, W swings an axe, rides a horse, works on a farm, on a ranch. Al Gore, man, he'd get a Purple Heart for a paper cut in the office. He's just not a man. Most of these intellectuals are like that. That's why they think that they have to assert themselves intellectually, beat you with ideas, and prove their mind superior. Yeah, George W. Bush. So they fight by proxy. Ultimately, a lot of these folks that we consider are elite, they're cowards. But they all have their own ideas of how to make the country anew, how to destroy the old so they can remake it. They just never want to fight it with them. They don't want to fight it themselves or with their money or their family. They always use others, but they have different plans. We'll discuss some more of those tomorrow, but you have Cloward and Piven will bring down the country through economic collapse. You have Woodrow Wilson will bring down the country and we'll change it through higher education, and we'll create this ruling elite that'll take over all the industries and institutions in our country and the government. And then you have John Dewey. We'll just nationalize the people and we'll socially engineer new, better, more compliant citizens. Or you have Walter Lippmann. We'll change everybody through propaganda. Lippmann and Edward Bernays through the media. The goal is all the same. Remake the country. They're all arguing over how best to do it according to their own expertise or presumed expertise. But you and I, when we look in from the outside, we're like, well, that's just chaos. There's no unity of any common goal or purpose. Well, yes, there is. Yes, there are. You're just not looking for them. You don't want to do the work. So we have these enemies to the nation as it was founded. And these enemies are very motivated and very dedicated. They're true believers. Now, they might have different beliefs, communism, socialism, fascism, whatever, different goals. But they're organized, well-funded. They've got a plan that they're executing. And they're doing just that. They're executing it. They're willing to act. They're willing to bleed. Some of them are willing to kill. A group of them are willing to die for their cause. Now, I ask you, how many of those on the right will bother to get themselves out of bed to go to a protest? How many of them are willing to face Obama's police force like on January 6th and pay the price of that? You're going to be falsely accused of an insurrection that they instigated. And if you're not keeping up with the news, January 6th was a false flag organized by the Democratic Party and the deep state. It's straight up. The people who stormed the Capitol violently were probably, more than likely, from everything we can tell now, government operatives. The people who were there to protest the election were peaceful until they were fired on by weapons with lethal force from the police without provocation. There's video of it. And all these claims that the crowd killed law enforcement officers, no, they didn't. There was not one law enforcement officer killed that day by the crowd. Research it. If you don't believe me, don't just dismiss it with a wave of your hand. Get off your butt and go research it. And don't do it through the mainstream media. Go to the congressional records and see what's coming out. So these people, these enemies of this country, they're willing to lie, steal, cheat, use people, deceive, bribe, and for them, the ends justify the means. They think it's a moral action. Yes, Natasha Ashley Babbitt. If you've seen that video, there was no reason to shoot her. That was just a murder. That man got pardoned too. Well, the pardon may not stick anymore thanks to the AutoPen deal, but why would you have to pardon somebody who didn't do anything wrong? You do understand that you can't issue a pardon to somebody who hasn't been charged and convicted of a crime, right? If I've never been charged, you can't be pardoned for something you didn't officially commit until you have been charged and convicted. You can't be pardoned. So what's with a preemptive pardon to begin with? And why do we act like that's illegal? See, that's part of what I'm talking about. Trust. I can't even trust the pardon system anymore. You can't pardon somebody. You can give executive immunity, but that's not a pardon. These are different things. These have meaning in the legal language. We're just now, a lot of these, Natasha says, don't Trump pardon the J6 protesters. Yeah, but they got charged. Now, they didn't all get a trial, but they were charged with sedition. So a lot of these people who do this fighting against this country, the rank and file, not their leadership, there's no ideal with them. They just have this vague, and even the leadership, to be honest with you, that's not a real ideal. The founding fathers had an ideal: individual rights and liberty, natural law, natural rights according to the rule of law. They had an ideal. A lot of these folks don't. Not all of them, but most of them don't have an ideal. What they have is a plan and a purpose. But a plan and a purpose is not the same thing as an ideal. And they're rank and file soldiers. There's no ideal. There's no plan with them. It's just nihilism. They all just want to destroy. There's no hope with these people. It's all about greed and fear and, honestly, sloth. If you're poor, I don't think you're a victim. Nobody took that from you. They didn't. Oh, the rich man kept me. No, that's intellectually dishonest and it's lazy. The majority of people who are poor because they choose it. At least in this country. You choose it. Huh? You choose to be poor. Explain. Well, I got to have a cell phone. No, you don't. You don't have to have. There's $60, $70, $80, $100 a month that you don't have to spend. Well, I got to have a car, depending on where you're living. No, you don't. You can live with a bicycle. There's several $100s. Gas, insurance. So I have to have fancy clothes. No, you don't. You can get away with 2 or 3 pair of clothes. Just wash them a lot. So I have to have a fancy house. No, you don't. You literally live in one of these portable sheds that you can buy for a couple $1,000 or make. You don't need all this stuff. If I was just starting out again today, a young man again, I wouldn't do what I did before. If I knew now what I knew, starting out, what I've learned, wouldn't be no fancy car. I'd be the cheapest Kunkler I could get. I'd live as cheaply as possible. I don't need a girlfriend. Not at first. I've learned she's expensive. And there's no harm with that. I'm just saying it's expensive. I don't want a family early in life like I did before. I'm going to go earn a living by starting out with learning a trade or a skill that I can market to my fellow human being that they're going to want to pay for. And then I'm going to save up as much money as I can until I can afford to live on my, within my means. And I'll stay there. And I will save. You see, that's one of the biggest things between the rich and the poor. It's the rich save. They live within their means. They invest. They live for the future. The poor lives for the here and now. It's a mindset. And in a lot of ways, it's a culture. So I have no excuse. And there's nothing morally superior about them. They don't become victims or better people just because they're poor. Poor is a relative term. If we're all millionaires and all of y'all have $10 million and I only have $2 million, we're all millionaires, but compared to you, I'm poor. Well, the poorest person in this country, unless you're homeless, maybe, but if you're on welfare, you're richer than most of the people in the world, even in some developed countries. It's all a relative term. We've fallen for a lie. So when we fall for these lies, it gives them what they're wanting, what the ruling elite want. It provides a vacuum that the tyrants can enter into. And the sheep become, just like Woodrow Wilson said, they become the clay with which the consummate leader works. In other words, they just become the material. They're open to being deceived, manipulated, and bribed. So there's just, that's what the intellectual wants. That's what they're after. That's the condition they're trying to create. We're going to go to the break a little early here. It's just 3 minutes. We'll come back. I'll pick up where I've left off. We'll keep going today. We'll get through this. Hopefully you'll come back after the break. Natasha, 3 minutes. Song of your choosing. Okay, welcome back. When we left off, I was talking to you about the goals and agendas. And one of the things that the people trying to destroy this country are looking for is to set up certain circumstances. One of the biggest assets they have is propaganda. And there's many forms of propaganda, and it's at all levels in our society today. The media, the so-called news media, is not news anymore. Movies, There's lots of propaganda in movies, TV shows, in your music, school system, corporations, DEI, and all this other stuff. I won't fly right now. The airlines are still pushing DEI. Well, I have to have an extremely experienced white male to fly, or I don't care what, person of color or maybe different sexual orient. Hey, as long as I got a pilot's license, let's go. Well, folks, you can get idiots a pilot's license. I don't want them flying an airliner. Have you been paying attention to how many incidents there have been in American aviation lately with the airliners? There are a few places online that I watch. Blanco Lirio, Taking Off, Pilot Debrief, a couple of they're all former military and civilian flight people that do, keep us up to date on what's going on in aviation. They cover the wrecks, the crashes, and the incidents, reading the FAA reports and crash investigation reports and everything. There have been a few of them where these gentlemen have just flat told us that more than likely there were people in the pilot seat that shouldn't have been there. And people don't want to disparage the pilot, especially when folks die. That crash up in Canada earlier this year, that was pilot error from a pilot who they knew shouldn't have been in the cockpit. I mean, it even affects the military. There's a very famous incident with a crash of the F-14 female pilot. The plane was just too much for her. She shouldn't have been in it. And if she hadn't been female, they would have grounded her out of that airplane. But because of political pressures, so she ended up destroying multi-million-dollar plane and killing herself because it was just too much airplane. And that applied to a lot of men. So we have that now in our society at all levels. And it destroys your trust and your faith in the police department, medical fields, aviation, all the things in the school system. If I had young children today, I'd be homeschooling somehow. There ain't no way on earth I would subject my child to what's going on in the public school systems. And now I know, well, Joe, we live in a good public school system. No, you don't. No, you don't. You just don't understand how subtly these things are being done. And we live in a school system where it still has some hedge of protection around our part of the country. But the books that our students are using are still coming from the two main areas that choose our textbooks. And both of those are under Islamic control today. Muslim Brotherhood influences them. So you're getting textbooks. So even if you've got a quote unquote conservative school district, they're teaching out of poisoned textbooks. So once they use this propaganda they use it to shape or form public opinion and direct it and to push people to do things. We see that right now. It's going on really bad. Calling the right and Trump fascists. Well, it's okay to kill fascists, so it's okay to kill Trump and conservatives and MAGA people. That's going on right now. And this is the same playbook that was used by Hitler. But Hitler, if you'll bother to pay attention and learn history, Hitler's people told you they learned it from Edward Bernays, Woodrow Wilson. And he used this system to demonize Germans during World War I. And he allowed Germans to be killed in the streets. His administration encouraged it. And German citizens were murdered in the streets. Nobody went to jail over it. But you went to jail for criticizing the Wilson administration in your own home. Different day, same school, same song. So what they're looking for is to create the appearance of a majority will, even when it's not. Because then that gives them, they can translate it into political pressure and power. They can, they use it. It's the kabuki theater that Mr. Spikes was talking about. And then they use that to justify their actions. Well, January 6th, they're questioning the election. See, they're trying to overthrow the government. So we have to crack down on them. That's not what was going on. And you have a First Amendment right to question an election. You do. Now, a lot of these people, they never quite achieve their goals. Have you ever noticed that? They never are never satisfied, even when they get what they claim they wanted. They never rest. Push, push, push. So if you give them, we've got Obamacare, it's all cured. But Obamacare was designed to it was designed to bribe the insurance industry so that it would eventually crush the insurance industry and open the door to federal government. Well, some of that got changed by later, the Trump administration. So it didn't work. So now what it's doing is it's just crushing the individual that has to, by law, now buy insurance. And if you have to subsidize it, that proves it's not the Affordable Care Act. All of this is a lie. So why now we got to fix the fix that you told us was going to fix the fix that you had before? They never fix anything. And they're never satisfied. And yet they're the ones creating the problem so they could sell you their next fix. Does that sound like a drug dealer to you? Because it's exactly what this is. It's the same principle. They have no answers. And if you ever notice, they have no clarity. They'll never answer a question. And if they do, you don't know what language they're using. You can't trust what they're saying. And that's because fixing the problem is not their goal. It never has been and it never will be. Their goal is just power. That's all they want is power. So, what do? I told you we'd get to this part. You're not going to like this. I don't like this, but I'll face the monster and look him right in his beady little eyes. It's too late to vote your way out of this. You've been told over and over again that you can vote your way into tyranny, but you got to shoot your way out of it. You have voted your way into tyranny. You've played the R versus D game so long. And when people tried to tell you, Carol Quigley tried to tell us in 1966, oh, that's just a conspiracy theory. Except now that when we look back on it, everything he warned us about has happened. It wasn't prophecy. He was just honoring the threat. So you can't vote your way out. The only solution is to purge. Now, I'm going to go back to history. In the Bible, when the promised land was conquered, it was purged. And every time Israel became apostate, turned toward other gods, Yahweh purged it. Okay, let's go to more modern times. Let's go to World War II. You could not defeat the Japanese unless you defeated their religion. I don't know how much of World War II and the Japanese and the Code of Bushido and their religious belief system you're aware of, but there was a reason we nuked Japan. Had to. We had to crush their religious beliefs that the emperor was a god and that he was going to be able to protect them. And by the way, if you're, oh God, nuclear weapons were just so horrible. Have you seen Hiroshima and Nagasaki lately? They've been flourishing cities for a long time. And do you know about the firebombing of Tokyo? Conventional firebombing. We killed far more people in that one night than we ever did with either of those nuclear bombs. Possibly killed more people with that firebombing than we did with both nuclear bombs combined. America doesn't know about that. You know about Dresden, Hamburg, the firebombings there? What we did there just for the sake of killing people? We're not innocent in all of this. But the whole purpose was to crush the will of the people. Now, it didn't work against Germany. And it wasn't because they thought Hitler was a god. They were still nominally Christian. So you couldn't defeat that religion because it's a faith. But we did defeat the religion of Japan. And today, Japan, an ally, a strong ally, but also a flourishing country, they were provided the opportunity to restart from scratch. Germany wasn't. And that's why socialism sprung back up in Germany again, because it was never purged. It wasn't purged from the Kaiser's Weimar Republic either. Unless you purge the idea, burn it to the ground, it'll just come back bigger and badder than ever. So, unfortunately, that's the lesson that history teaches us, is that you have to purge it. Well, if you're going to purge that, that requires real men, good, tough men, idealistic men, committed men, men who are driven. But they cannot be more of the same in a different disguise. And in this case, I'm talking about Trump. He's not a Bible believer. He talks in religious terms, but he doesn't believe in the scriptures. He still thinks he's going to earn his way to heaven. But he doesn't need forgiveness because he's never done anything wrong. I don't want to harp on that. I don't care if you go to church. I don't care what type of flowery language you talk in. I want to see you walk the walk. He hasn't done that. But MAGA thinks he has, because he's given the appearance of what you think you want. And what you've bought is more of the same with a different suit, different disguise. No, we need real men of virtue and honor, morally grounded men, men of capital T truth, men of God, not just any God, Yahweh, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But now that brings us back to where I told you we were going to return earlier. People reject the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Even if you give them proof, evidence that the scriptures are real, that they can actually be tested, sort of kind of scientifically, they'll refuse it. They don't want anything to do with the scriptures. Why? They're risk adverse. They don't want to take the risk. Might lose what I've got here in this world to go chasing after that one. Disbelief. They don't believe in, supernatural. Denial. Oh, there can't be a God. That Bible can't be real. Pain avoidance. Bible tells you have to change. Fear. Why would you be fearful of the Bible? Well, if it's true, there's a price to be paid for the way we've lived, the way we might continue to live. So how do I know whether or not it's true? Well, you got to test it. Most people won't even bother to read it, let alone test it. They have no curiosity. They're lazy. Even professed believers fall into this. They'll make excuses. They prefer willful ignorance. They'll listen to, their teachers, their pastors, their politicians. I don't have to read history. I know the founding fathers were deists and evil haters and racists and bigots and slave owners. Well, I know that God is all these ugly things too. Why? Because somebody told me so. But ultimately, I think all of these is the same reason. We won't accept what's going on in this country because if we do, the ramifications are too difficult to accept, to face, to embrace. It's going to demand action on our part. And if I go and I read the Bible and I realize, hey, I can test it and I test it and it comes up true. Oh, crap. Now I got to act. I don't want to do that. Well, that's why nothing's going to happen in this country either. You don't want to do what it takes to save it. That's how we got here. And that's why we're a dead nation walking. A friend of mine said that it's going to be time for us to start playing cowboys and Muslims soon. For good men to start doing bad things. I told him, I don't think there are enough good men left. Not to solve the problems in a worldly manner. Now, there are some justifications both on the political and the religious side. So if you're looking at politics and the conspiracy theories, I can understand you don't know who to trust. Well, don't trust me. I hand you the receipts for a reason. And I don't tell you, oh, here's a book that quotes another book, that quotes another book, that quotes a historian. I say, Woodrow Wilson said, here's where he said it. Woodrow Wilson. If I'm going to quote Woodrow Wilson, I'm going to give you Woodrow Wilson as my receipt. If If I'm going to tell you what John Dewey believed, I'm going to give you John Dewey as my receipt. If I'm going to tell you what Stalin and Lenin and Hitler and Mussolini were pushing, I'm going to hand you those men, their words right off of their hand or their mouth. I'm not going to give you an intermediary or in between. Now, if you can't find it in your daily world to find 5 minutes to go research that stuff, because most of the time, I'm not making you Google it. You just got to click the link. I've done all the work I know how to do for you. I'm not going to do any more. But I'm going to tell you this. Don't ever come to me and Joe, you're wrong. Why? Oh, I just believe. Did you go check the receipts? No, but get out of here. I don't listen to ignorant people tell me I'm wrong. Now, did you check the receipts? Yes. I'll ask you a question or two to satisfy myself that you actually read it. And if you did, then I'm going to ask you to give me a sound, valid, and rational argument for why I'm wrong. And if you do, and I can't break it, or I can't give you a better one, I'll change my position. I got a record of that. I'll do it. Because ultimately, I'm after capital T truth. And that truth comes from the Creator. The only God in the history of man who has claimed to have created this world ex nihilo, out of nothing. All the other gods created the universe out of what pre-existed. Yahweh didn't do that, which means Allah's not Yahweh. Haha. Sorry, Muslims. So you have to test things to see what you can trust. That requires study. That's action, not words. If you're studying, start looking for patterns. Patterns in history, patterns in behavior. Then you honor the threat. Tomorrow, I'm going to show you the patterns. I'll get the material up a little bit later today. Hopefully by this afternoon. It'll be on the Road to Concord blog page. And then I'll put the link in tomorrow's show on Rumble. But we're going to look at color revolutions. And we're going to look at how we're in the middle of one right now. We called it the Arab Spring when it was Obama pushing them. It's still in part Obama, but he's just a front man. You never know who the they are. They hide behind their operatives for good reason. But we're going to look at the patterns. And we're going to look at how it works. We're also going to talk about Islam. I'm going to tell you right now, we've got an established pattern of indifference amongst those who claim to care. This show is not going to make a difference. Not in the outcomes of this nation politically or even culturally. No tweet, no meme, no article that you share on social media is going to make a difference in the outcome of our political events. I've given up on trying to change that. The only place where I can actually make a difference is in the individual. And that's the place where we were supposed to have been fighting all along. Make disciples of the nations. Well, how do you do that? One disciple at a time. And then eventually that changes the nations. And if I look at history, that's exactly how the Judeo-Christian ethic built what we call the Western world, the Western Judeo-Christian world. There's only one place where Islam is properly confronted. And that's when it runs smack into secular humanism. And I don't mean socialism. And I don't mean fascism. The closer to Marxism you are, the more appropriately you deal with Islam, except with a few very important and very minor exceptions, like Japan, where they were razed to the ground and freed and allowed to start all over. They kept their cultural identity, but they were freed from the ideology that had ruled over them for centuries. They deal with Islam very differently. They just don't allow it. The Chinese deal with Islam very brutally. They'll kill them. But let me ask you something. What is the common ground between China and Japan? They still defend their culture and their history, something we don't do anymore. It's the next quick little article I was going to share with you. It says, recover the public through classical education. Well, I think it's too late, but they make a comment here. And it says, every republic teaches something to the young, whether it admits it or not. The question is never if we educate, but what we elevate, what we honor, and what we shame. America stands at a hinge moment between renewal and decline, and the regime that wins the minds of Gen Z wins the century. Classical education, as Jordan Adams reminds us here, does not simply transmit knowledge. It transmits civilization. If we wish for self-government to endure, we must recover the sources that made it possible. Well, there's another article that I'll share with you tomorrow. We now have a majority of Gen Z that want AI to run the government. I hope I don't have to tell this class how horribly dangerous that is and how stupid that is. And then something else that we're going to talk about tomorrow is this article. This is the Gateway Hispanic, the silent conquest, when the West surrenders by its own will. It says, for centuries, Europe resisted with blood and courage the attempts of Islamic expansion. It endured several hundred years of wars, invasions, and struggles to preserve a civilization built upon the Judeo-Christian values, individual freedoms, and national sovereignty. Today, however, that same Europe, and by extension, the entire Western world, seems to be surrendering without a fight, opening its doors and abandoning its identity under the banner of political correctness and misguided notions of multiculturalism. These are not mere opinions. They come from an Orthodox Muslim himself who brutally honestly admitted, quote, for 700 years, our tribe tried to conquer Europe by force and failed. We did something wrong. But what we could not achieve in 20 years, the West is now doing for us, for free, and even paying for it. And yes, have you seen the stories about how much of our welfare money and stuff like that is actually going to the Islamic terrorists? Billions, hundreds of billions. All that USAID money. I told you, the American left got in bed with Islam. Not radical Islam, Islam. That idea of radical Islam is a lie. Well, Joe, there are a lot of peaceful Muslims. No. The studies tell you that some 60 to 70%, it's a high percentage, close to 70, of all American Sunnis will pick up the sword and start screaming Allah Akbar as soon as there's a caliph in place to declare global jihad. It's kind of like the difference between a Roman Catholic and a Protestant. This is a part of the rift between Sunni and Shia. Sunnis think that you have to have their version of the Pope to tell you to go to war. Shia think that they can do that individually. It's kind of like, well, unless I have a Pope, I can't evangelize the world, or I was told to evangelize the world by myself if necessary. Folks, Shia, the hard edge of Islam, they're doing exactly what Muhammad told them to do. Sunnis are apostates, which is why the Shia want to kill them. Yes, if they had their option or choice, they would kill off Sunni Islam before they even killed the infidels, because they don't consider them true believers. But the left, the American left, married to Muslims for the money. And Obama started importing them much more than the Southern, Central, and South American Latino base. He started bringing in Muslims by the truckload, plane load, shipload. He knew what he was doing. It hasn't even been 20 years yet. And we are seriously paying the price. Now, a lot of the Hispanic immigrants and the Latinos that came in from South America, they won't necessarily assimilate into this country, but they don't want to also destroy it. Islam does. And I told you, Islam will end up killing the American left, just like it has killed anything and everything in its path before. It's a swarm of locusts. The jihadi fighter is a locust, and they will destroy and consume everything in its path. By the way, if you understand the prophetic language, the seven-headed beast, the fourth kingdom to come is not Rome, it's Islam. And it did conquer over the Holy Lands for a long time. And the West killed it in 1924 when we ended the Ottoman Empire. And that Muslim cleric we just read is telling you that the West is bringing it back to life. A mortal head wound that had died that came back to life. Brought back to life by the two-horned beast. Like a lambkin. Image of the Messiah. But speaks like the dragon. Speaks like Satan. An apostate church. Two horns, one longer than the other. Roman Catholics and Protestants. And the beast, the two-horned beast, the lambkin, the kingdom, the religious kingdom, Mystery Babylon, has brought that seventh head back to life. Islam. And because the church turned so apostate and quit praying effectively, quit binding on earth and loosing in heaven, the pit's open. And Satan is running around fooling the nations because he knows his time is short. And he has once again opened his mouth to drown the woman, Israel, with a flood of people. If you have ears to hear and eyes to see. This is where I'll end for the day. Tomorrow I'm going to go into this in even more depth. I was going to do it today, but I think I can do a much better presentation tomorrow. For the first time, we'll try to show video on this show, live video, so that we don't get ourselves in trouble. Do it the way Joe Rogan does it. And I'm going to try to knit all this together for you and show you the bigger picture. We're going to do it's going to be a lot like an intelligence analysis from, an intelligence community, how they put things together. A little bit. Kind of like a spy show. I hope you'll join us. I'll show you what you're looking at, where it comes from, where it's going. From there, you're going to have to make decisions as to what you do. I can't decide for you, and I don't want to. It's not my job. So until tomorrow, if you like what we're doing, if you find this show valuable, hit the like buttons wherever you're watching it. Share the show, please. Doesn't take you long. Warn people. Put a little intro in there. Hey, man, dude's a jerk, whatever. Listen to what he's saying, not how. I do the best I can. Tell your friends to check my receipts before they give me a hard time about what I'm saying. Go prove me wrong. Don't try to prove me right. Prove me wrong. Give that a chance. Good luck. I want proof. That's all I'm asking. You give me Wikipedia, I'm going to laugh at you. For reasons that you'll find tomorrow. If you are in a position to do so and you're so inclined, go to the donate pages. Help us keep the show on the air. But if you don't promote the show, it's not going to happen. I'm hesitant to spend money on advertising this thing. Truth be told, I doubt myself. I don't know why you're here. I really don't. I don't know why you listen to me. I think there are many better voices out there you could listen to. No, they're not knitting the picture together the way I see it, but each of them does their specific part much better than I do. My job is just knit the whole together. And I don't think I do a very good job of that. So for those that matter, or for those to whom it would matter. Y'all humble me just by being here. You honor me. And I try to return the favor by doing the best job I can. And in the past, I've dialed it in, phoned it in a few too many times. I'm going to try to get better with each show from now on, because I can't shake the feeling that time is short. Hopefully somebody somewhere will benefit somehow from what we're doing here. And if nothing else, hey, we love you, man. All of us, Charlie, Natasha, myself, those who are helping to keep the show on the air. Thank you for being here. Hope we're helping you in return. So until tomorrow, y'all stay safe and take care of yourself. We'll see you then. Bye-bye. Natasha, we're gone.